All right. So, welcome to another exclusive SUP46 workshop. We are really happy to have you guys here. The purpose of those workshop series is to give you as an entrepreneur really good, quick, tangible advice on how to improve your startup journey and hopefully improve opportunity of success. So it's going to be, as always, 45-minute session plus 15 minutes Q&A. We might make it shorter, but we'll see where things goes. And as always, for great experience for everyone, make sure you keep your mic on mute, but your webcam turn on, because that's going to make it way more fun for me and Niklas and Kat. So don't be shy, turn your webcams on so we can interact a little bit more. Yeah, the recordings will be stored and uploaded to our internal library, and the deck will be shared as well. Also, special welcome to our friends from Scania. Really good to have our accelerator partner here today, and some of your entrepreneurs and leaders. So you're especially welcome to this workshop session. And thanks, Kat, for coordinating everything. And she'll also handle late arrivals, so make sure we keep the conversation going. And don't forget to answer the survey afterwards, because that will help us keep the quality of what we're doing good. And now it's my pleasure to welcome today's expert, Niklas Agevik. He will be sharing his knowledge and deep experience on how to get investors excited and how to basically win more term sheets. And also wish him a happy belated birthday, because it was his birthday last week. So he got that going for him. Niklas is a serial entrepreneur. He raised 100 million from VC and won multiple pitch competitions. Great guy, fantastic storyteller, and I hope you can get some of his skills or toolbox today. So without further ado, Niklas, thanks for joining us today, leaving the mic to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sebastian. And I'm actually also one of the first SUP46 members, back in 2012, 2013, 2014. So I think I have can relate to what some of you are and what you're going through. So thank you, Sebastian. A pleasure to be here. It will be super fun to talk about this. Let me just quickly say who I am. I mean, you mentioned a couple of things there. So Niklas, I think if I would describe myself with one word, I would say that I'm an entrepreneur. Love starting things and really going from nothing to something. But over the years, I realized that there's a couple of things that I'm more passionate about in that entrepreneurship journeys than others. And I think the top one is storytelling. I love the idea of taking something very simple and turning it into exciting story, and finding what's exciting in what somebody's doing. And as I was prepping this pitch, I realized that this is something I'm very passionate about, because I think this is where Europe has fallen a bit behind in the US. I mean, in the US, many people are amazing storytellers, and they're learning that already in school. So that's something I'm passionate about teaching. I think it's something that can lift European entrepreneurship, and Swedish in particular. I'm also, I love leadership, strategy, also things that I'm quite excited about. So quick about me, I've done a ton of different startup projects during my life. I think the one I'm most famous for, or infamous for, this is a couple of years ago, so I mean, maybe not everyone knows about this, but I did a company called Instabridge, did an app, we raised 100 million SEK, we grew it to 20 million MAUs. It was one of these app startup social projects, it never had any revenue. It didn't work out in the end. It was sold to another startup actually in 2019. But since then, I have a kind of a new career that I think is still pretty entrepreneurial. Now I'm a professional CEO and an angel investor. And this is a career I wouldn't have if I didn't have the skills I'm about to teach you today. So I think the lesson here is that, even if things don't work out, the things I'm talking about, storytelling and, finding the good in every story, those are skills that you can use regardless of what you're doing. For example, we did at Reason Studios, which is the company I'm at now. We make software for musicians. We did a lot of work with banks and debt financing, and I'm using the exact same skills to do that as I'm doing here. And you might think, why should I listen to this guy? His startup failed, and I think it didn't fail because lack of funding or lack of of winning pitch competition. I think that was the one thing we really nailed. I mean, there was a while where Instabridge basically won every single pitch competition that we entered. The one I'm most proud of is the launch conference in San Francisco. We were on stage in front of 3,000 people, and we won Best International Startup, got pitch training by Jason Calacanis, who runs This Week in Startup, by Sequoia, by Benchmark Capital. He has an amazing experience to win that competition, and I think that's actually what really set the Instabridge off and allowed us to raise our first seed round with Random. But I think one thing that you can think when you hear pitch training and talking about the pitch, isn't a startup about building a great business. I mean, it's not about winning pitch competitions and raising money. And you'd be absolutely right. That's absolutely not what it's about. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to build a great business. But it certainly helps. I mean, if you run a business and you think you're going to raise money for it, why not make sure that you do that in such a short amount of time as possible? I mean, you want to build your business. You don't want to be out doing fundraisers. So I think, the storytelling and the things I'm going to talk about here, there are things that will help you to focus more on the business. And I'm also a big fan of writing. I write a lot. And something I've seen over the years is that, when I'm able to tell a good story or able to easily explain to somebody what we're doing, everything becomes easier. I mean, this is skills I can use when I set a strategy, when I run my management meetings, when I run my board meetings, to get everyone on the same page, to everyone understand what we're doing and so on. There's this famous quote from Mark Twain, clarity of speech means clarity of mind. And I think that's certainly true. And just to really drive this point in, I think, when you talk about like learning to pitch and, raising money, I think some people get this image in your head, what it's about. And I really want to stress that, like, it's not about being, this is Adam Newman. He did WeWork. I think the jury is still out if he fooled investors or exactly what he did. But, he raised a bunch of money on and some of the things he said they weren't entirely true. Like, he did a lot of good things too, but I think it's hard to hide from the fact that he went a bit too far in his storytelling, and that's not the goal. Like, that's not what I want to teach you. I mean, you should never lie to an investor, but that's me on the right in the middle of my amazing team. That's where you want to be. You want to be out, close your funding, and then you can be back and be there, like right in the middle of your team, building your fantastic company. The other thing I want to say before I jump into this is that storytelling, pitching, getting people excited about your startup, I think it's a craft. Like, this is not something that you're just going to learn overnight. Some people are very natural storytellers and they're great at it, and that's good for them. But whenever I try to find the good in a story, and for example here at Reason Studios, I mean, it took me a long time to be able to tell an investor what we're doing, like why it's exciting, why I think that Reason Studios is one of the most exciting companies when it comes to music making. But that's not something that I was able to do here overnight. I mean, I've done this for many years, but like, it's still very difficult for me. Like, and it is a process where you refine. You find like the core, the essence of the story. You see the meetings, you meet with people, and you practice and you practice and you practice. So I think, I can certainly help set you in the right direction, and I hope I achieved that today. But at the end of the day, I think what's really going to take you there in next level storytelling is just finding that story and then telling it over and over and over again to different people. I mean, that's usually what I do. I mean, I grab my wife and I pitch her Reason Studios. And if I can get her excited, I can get an investor excited. So that's good. And I think the other lesson here, the pitch is never better than your startup. I've seen a lot of cases where it's like so hard to find a good story. And, maybe that's not the pitch that needs work. Maybe there's something in the startup that you need to think about. The last thing I want to just mention is that regardless how good a storyteller you are, like how great you are at this, and how great you are at getting people excited about what you're doing, gravity still applies. Like the laws of physics are still there. I think the biggest predictor of fundraising success at both Instabridge and here at Reason Studios has been that we're meeting with an investor who is focused on what we do. And I think this is asking very basic questions about the investor, what vintage is the fund, and basically like what year was the fund raised. Most funds, they exist over a 10-year cycle, like they invest over the first 5 years, and then on the last 5 years, they have to return the money to the investor. So what that means is that, if it's year 1 of the fund, they have 10 years left to return that money to investors. And if it's year 5, they only have 5 years left. So they're going to take a lot of more risk in the beginning of that fund. So I think that, if you're early stage, which I think many of you are, then talking to a fund that's early in their life cycle is definitely going to just increase your chances of closing that round. And things
is it just asking the investors, or like, what's your recommendation there?
I think, you have what's called Crunchbase, typically have this information on different funds. Like there used to be somebody who did this in Sweden. I don't know if it's around anymore. Maybe there's some good here, but I think Crunchbase has for most funds. And, most funds like to announce when they raise a new fund. So if you read Breakit or TechCrunch or something, you tend to find it out. And you can just ask, of course. I mean, you should definitely ask. Like that's the, when we raised money for Reason Studios last year, I mean, that's the first question asked. Like, what year did you raise the fund? And also, like, what do they invest in? I mean, the same, you can read that on TechCrunch. You can ask people, are you talking to the right person? And do you have the right KPIs for their target? I mean, do you have the right ARR? Do you have the right MAUs? I think this changes a bit over time. Back in 2013, when we raised the seed round for Instabridge, you could still raise 10 million SEK without any revenue. I think that would be very difficult today. So I think that's more about talking to other entrepreneurs, talking to investors, getting a feel for like where is the market right now. Most investors will tell you approximately what they need to say. And I really want to stress, like, there's no way around this. Like, don't waste your time. Investors love wasting your time. And if you're talking to somebody and you're not in the focus, they're just never going to invest. But what I do think is interesting, Sebastian asked me ahead of this to talk a bit about how this changes between seed and Series A and Series B. And I think the core principles here that we talk about today, they actually don't change that much. Like the breadth of the KPIs and how much ARR and how much MAU you have to raise a Series A or Series B. I mean, that of course increases, but I think the same very core principles apply here. I mean, when we did a debt round for Reason Studios last year. And this is a very established company, 47 employees, 100 million SEK in revenue, and so on, and very profitable. And it's still like the same things applies here. It's just like a zero more at all of the KPIs in the end, basically. Cool. Does that make sense? I just want to get that out of the way before we get to the storytelling and how you do that.
Yeah, could you just, before we dive into that, because even though the core principles are the same, I agree and I understand. And when it comes to like the different stages, whether it's seed, Series A or Series B, Like, is there some major differences that you have identified that maybe it doesn't make sense to allocate too much time in when you're doing the seed round versus an A round, for example?
Hard to say actually. I think like at the end of the day, I think you have to still get people excited about your fund and getting the right investor. I think that's the core of it. I mean, Series B, Series A, Series B, they probably take a bit longer. Like there's more people involved. There's more questions going to be asked. There's going to be more due diligence. I mean, in a seed round, investors are probably going to skip over a bunch of questions. They're not going to dig down deep into everything. But, you know, if you do a Series A or Series B, you know, they're going to interview your CTO, they're going to interview employees and so on. So I think more on that end than in the starting end, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So let's say, you know, you're out raising money. What are you trying to achieve here? Well, in such a short amount as possible, you want to convince someone that what you're doing is incredibly valuable, and you can actually execute and capture all of that value. And the way I like to approach this is to start with how the human brain work. And you know, we have two parts to the brain. We have the left part of our brain, which is very logical. Like that's where, you know, you think EBIT, bottom line, ROI, SOV, interest, stock exchange, and so on. If you have a CFO, hopefully that person is very left-brained. And then you have the right brain, you know, that's where your creativity, your ideas, and your intuition lives. And most people are left-brained, or like, or yeah, I guess most people use both brains, or everyone uses both brains. But most people tend to be very left-brained. Like that, this is where we spend most of our thinking. And you know, if you have somebody on your team that's very right-brained, that's usually very annoying. That's usually somebody that thinks very different, but also ultimately somebody who's very valuable. But because that's somebody that's going to ask, like, you know, a difficult question, but also can be difficult to work with, because you know they're harder to think about KPIs and the EBIT and so on. And I think they say about 80 or 90% of us we spend most of our time with the left brain. And most of the advice you see, if you go online, if you search about fundraising for startup, that's also where most of the advice tend to be. And also that's why you see, you know, the type of advice you see, like if you know, somebody asks you, like, you know, how do I pitch a startup? This is typically what you're going to get back. It's a very left brain pitch structure. You know, oh, you're going to have your executive summary, then you have the problem and the solution, market validation and product and so on. And I mean, this feels logical, like that's why the left brain loves this. I mean, this makes sense. And, you know, if you build a pitch deck, you probably should have all of this, and this is probably a good structure to follow. But what I think I want to spend my time on is more about how do you do that, and you make sure that you activate the right part of the brain, because I think that's the more difficult part, and the like kind of part that we often gloss over. An interesting part about the right brain, you know, how do you tell a story that really activates that part of the brain? And the interesting thing is that we actually know this. We know exactly how to tell stories that get people excited and get people involved. I mean, we've known this for thousands of years. I mean, Aristotle on the right here, he wrote a book about it a long time ago. And there's, you know, there's a lot of literature, and this is something that that I'm quite interested in. I mean, I've read most of the literature about storytelling. And that, you know, I think we know the core principles very well. And the funny thing is, I was prepping this talk, I realized how often I myself forget to bring this in. I mean, it's so often that you rush, you're going to a meeting, you're going to present somebody, and you don't really spend the time to think through, like, how do I really tell a good story around this? So if I would recommend one book, you know, if you don't want to go back and read Aristotle's text in ancient Greek, I think one book that a modern book that did this really well is Made to Stick. I think this is a great book. It's quite short, and instead of this ethos and pathos and, you know, these classic Roman terms, I mean, they talk about stories that are simple, concrete, unexpected, credible, and emotional. And I thought I'd go through a bit, you know, how do you use those principles in your startup? Simple, well, that's the simplest one. If you're telling somebody a story and you want it to stick, if you want them to really remember what you're saying, it has to be simple. And I think this is so true, especially when we're talking to investors. You have to remember that you're meeting somebody who's probably going to meet another 4 startups after you. And most people, they're not just going to they're not going to spend the time to really think through, like, what did they say? What did they mean by that? And so on. So I think a core principle of every good story is that it's very, very simple. It's a complex world out there, and it's our job as entrepreneurs to simplify that and figure out what the core message is. And making something simple, that's not the same as dumbing something down. I mean, you don't want to go, so we're building a website, and on that website, there's going to be a checkout button. I mean, that's just dumbing it down. You want to keep simple. You want to get down to the core of the message. And I'm going to give a couple of examples of what I mean by that. But I want to mention the other here, concrete, before I do that. And talking concretely, I think this is very related to being simple. But talking about the more you can talk about something that actually exists, if you can use metaphors, real world examples. I think this is a common problem that many startups have. They take too long to get to what the actual product is or what they're actually doing. I mean, for example, like, you could have a pitch deck where you say that we are an online service provider of payment and payment infrastructure, including point of sale terminals. Or you could say, we send that little payment thingy where you swipe your card. You're given about the same amount of information in both sentences. I think the other is more memorable. People are gonna remember what you said, and that you paint this image in their head of what you're actually doing. And people understand, like, if you sell this payment thing, people get, like, there's banking and service, like, you don't have to talk about all of the infrastructure you have. And the same, you could say, we are a community-based provider of cheap, sustainable micro-mobility transportation service. Or you could also say, we are an Uber competitor, but with cheaper and smaller electric cars. Make sense? It's so hard to give lectures over Zoom. You don't know if people are, but hear what you say.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, good, Thomas. I see you done the thumbs up emoji. We can use that as well. Please turn on your webcams, our friends from Scania. It's way more interactive for us, so we can see, like, if it makes sense or not. So don't be shy. Don't be shy.
So some of you here were very brave, and you sent me your pitch decks ahead of this call or this workshop. So I mean, I hate to be the one. I know, like, what it's like to be an entrepreneur. I hate to be the one to complain about pitch decks, but I thought that I'd give a little feedback and give some example of how that can be used. And now, I mean, I haven't heard you pitch. Like, I've only seen the decks. I mean, I didn't spend too much time on this. I probably butcher your pitch a little. But here was one pitch deck that I received from a company called Plus. So here's company, Plus is building a platform for users to capture, understand, and directly benefit. Okay, from digital footprint. Okay, a platform. What's a platform? Is it servers? Okay, I'm gonna have to connect some data sources. Oh, I want to do that. I have to explore my digital persona. Like, why do I want to do that? And benefit from data. Oh, they're gonna sell my stuff and get ads. And for ad money or something. So I mean, I'm just reacting here, and I'm probably butchering your pitch, but I think, if you have a slide like this, as most people have, I mean, I think you could just as well say something like this. I mean, the Plus app puts you in the driver's seat of your own personal data. You simplified it quite a lot. You made it quite concrete. I don't have to worry about how everything works. I mean, you're building an app. And this, by the way, this sounds super valuable. Like, I mean, this is an app on my phone where I can control all of my personal data. I love that. I mean, I want this app, and I mean, and I can start, imagining myself, how you're going to monetize this and the thing you're going to do. So again, like, I mean, I probably butchered 100 different things in your pitch, but just an example of something you can do. how we can take something and make it very simple. And again, like if it's storytelling, like if you show the slide to an investor and you said it's, we're making this app that puts you in control of personal data, I think they're going to remember that. Like that's something that's going to stick in their head. The other thing we had on the list here was unexpected. And I don't think there's that much that you can do here in the storytelling part. I just think that like if you do a startup, it's always about doing something different. If you're doing, the 100 scooter sharing service, you'd better start by explaining why you're different. Like do you have different brand? Do you go into different cities? What is it that you're doing different? But I think this is something that almost all startups are good at. Of the pitches I got here ahead of this meeting, all of them were pretty unexpected and good. And I think that like as an entrepreneur, you're naturally starting from something new. So I don't think this is somewhere where most people need to spend a lot of the time. Credible, I think is interesting. I think this is where a lot of startups fail. You get this pitch. There's a bunch of different slides. They're saying that they're going to be the new Facebook, and you kind of lose people that like people like, yeah, I guess like will be valuable if you build the next Facebook, but it's very hard to believe you. Why should I believe you that you will be the next Facebook? And I think it's hard to give general tips on how to come up as credible. I think it's just about making sure that like whatever you say, does this actually sound reasonable? Can they actually do this? Can they do what they set out to achieve? I think the one Jedi mind trick that I often use and that works really well is to provide more as much details as possible as you're talking. I think this is kind of a Jedi mind trick because if you provide details about something, you always seem more credible. This is how a lot of conspiracy theories work. They're very detailed lists. This person went there and they did this and they did that and they talked to that person and their kids are friends with this person and so on. And so the conspiracy theorists knows this. So let's see it from them. For example, like if you say, oh, I have a background in logistics, I worked in logistics, or you say, when I ran last mile delivery for Sweden, for DHL in Sweden in 2017, okay, wow, like this person knows what they're talking about. You could say many customers have this problem, but you could also say exactly, very concretely, exactly, what customers they are and what they said. You could say, when we asked 200 customers what their biggest pain point with existing delivery service was, they said that. Can you feel that? Do I sound more credible when I say that? And you could say this is a $200 billion market, or you could say, if you're selling furniture, you could say in Europe the average household spends 50,000 SEK on furniture every year. I think many startups they have a tendency to want to talk about how big the market is. We all know that like VCs they're looking for like these big opportunities, big markets, and so on. But I think it's very rare that you need to explain that what you're doing is big. If you're selling furniture, I don't think you need to convince me that furniture is a big market. I get that. Like if you can be the new IKEA, that's going to be a big company. So then I think it's much better to actually provide some sort of insight or show something that an investor or whoever you're talking to actually can use. If I say, the average household spends 50,000 SEK on furniture every year, I can think, yeah, that sounds very reasonable. 50,000 SEK, how often does somebody buy a new table or a new chair? You've actually given them some information that they can use to digest your startup. Makes sense? Yeah. And we also have emotional. And that's getting something, getting people to care about the problem that you're trying to solve. And I think the easiest way to do this is, of course, to solve a problem that people care about. And it's easier for some than others. It depends a bit what you're doing. But I think you should always try. I think I have very rarely met a startup that doesn't have a good story in them. Where there's something where they can make me really care about the problem that they're trying to do. And I want to give you an example here. Like a clip is my friend Therese. I'm an advisor to her startup, Grace Health. So this is how she started her pitch at Brilliant Minds.
Something is wrong in the world today, and we're being reminded time and time again that women don't own the rights to their own bodies. States, governments, religions, organizations do, often dictated by men, and they're making decisions for her at her cost. We are regressing. This is a human rights issue. It's not a women's rights issue.
Okay, yeah. So yes, that's actually short. So that was the intro to her pitch, and you know, you can see that she raised quite a lot of money after this. I mean, people don't even know what her startup is doing. Like, she hasn't mentioned the product. She hasn't talked about what they're doing. I mean, they haven't said anything about the market. The market for women's health product is 200 billion SEK per year. You know, she hasn't said anything like that. I mean, she's just said that she's solving a problem that's very important. And, you know, and you can say, like, this is very easy for Therese. I mean, she is actually attacking a very important problem in women's rights, or human rights even. But I think in almost every startup, you can find that story, something that's good. Was not the pitch deck here I received. And I think, you know, this is very left-brained pitch deck and very good in many ways, but, you know, it was like a classic problem solution pitch deck and very easy to follow. And, you know, you could say, okay, I mean, I'm selling digital locks. I mean, how can I make that exciting? But I think you can, if you try, you know, you shouldn't make up a story, but, you know, maybe there's some insight or something that happened that made you start this company that you could tell. I mean, I'll just make up a story now. You know, you could say, you know, like the background to Inside the Box was when my sister, she's like a single mother, she has 3 kids, she's very busy, and to save money, she orders a bunch of stuff online. And she forgot to return a very expensive dress she had bought, because it was so difficult to find. You know, like, there were so many different text messages and so many different boxes she was going to return it to, that she didn't find a way to send it back. And we built this because I want to help her and make her life easier, so that, you know, she can just put the stuff inside your house and somebody will come pick it up for her. Okay, so that's maybe not the most exciting story, but you know, you get the picture. I'm sure, like, you know, for every startup, you probably have something that triggered you to actually start it, like actually a real problem that triggered you to want to do the startup. And even if it's, you know, even if you're not solving, you know, human rights issues in Africa, I'm sure there are things that are exciting and something that will get me more excited about it.
When is
Again,
that?
I mean, yeah.
Personal, so, sorry to interrupt, but also, like, even if it's not like the biggest problem, it's definitely huge and gets exciting when it gets personal, right?
Yes.
So that's also one thing I noticed when you talked about your sister that you wanted to help. Like, okay, this is a passionate founder wanting to solve problems that is he in his front yard.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
Niklas, sorry, we have 10 minutes left of the presentation. Just so you know.
Okay. Cool. I think I'll start wrapping up then. So, for example, like, if you put this all together, if you take all of this principle together, you know, I took one of the pitch decks and I'm going to re-pitch it a bit, like the way I would have told the story. And, you know, this is going to be one of these, you know these ads for weight loss, like, you know, in the before picture, like the person is angry and like looking down, and after, like, they're smiling. It's going to be a bit like that. I'm going to pitch. I've never heard your pitch about this. I'm going to probably pitch this in the worst possible way to make myself look better when I do the other pitch. So, let's see. Yeah. So here I'll do the original pitch and I'll do my quick take on it. Hi, I'm Niklas. I'm the founder of Modly. We make furniture that fits. We are a next generation tech-first furniture company. We have a made-to-measure concept that create a superior product which is loved by customers due to the superior fit, quality, and customer experience. Our vision is to be an international tech-first furniture company with a great range of fully customizable furniture of high quality. Our customer segment is 30 to 35-year-olds, couples and families who are moving or renovating and have an interior interest. Please invest in my startup. Okay, so that's one way to pitch it. I just did a quick take on this just ahead of this call. So again, like, I'm sorry to Modly if the founders are here. Sorry if I ruined your pitch. You probably pitched this a lot better. Okay, hey, I'm Niklas. I'm the founder of Modly, and we create unique spaces for everyone. You know, our core belief is that the world has become more boring. When I was traveling and visiting my friends in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in San Francisco, I saw the same apartments, the same IKEA bookshelves everywhere. And when I talk to them, I say that it's not that everyone wants the same bookshelves. They actually bother because these all look the same. They have the same spaces, and, you know, the apartments are different sizes and so on. They actually want custom furniture, but the problem is that it's out of range for them. I mean, custom furniture today costs thousands of dollars or thousands of euros. Even a custom sofa will cost you 5,000 euros. So that's why we started Modly. We want to let anyone create a unique space, and we're doing that, and we're starting with furniture. And we're already live today. We are an e-commerce site for furniture. You can go into our app, you design your own furniture. It's super simple. It takes 30 seconds. You design it completely according to your own space, and it's cheap, almost the same price as the IKEA. We already live. We launched this in 2022, and we're on track for 3.5 million SEK in sales with a gross margin of 40%. So yeah, that's Modly. Do you think the second pitch was it more exciting than the first? It's going to be very rough if people say no.
Yeah, way better.
Yeah. So just an example. I think I didn't time myself here, but I think I used the same amount of time. It was about a minute to pitch to say those two things, the same thing. So yeah, I think, you know, you Katrin, like, running out of time, so I leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Niklas. Really appreciate you sharing your experience, and not just talking about theoretical things about what to do, but also taking actual pitches and applying your methodology is really helpful. I can see you're already raising hands. Let's start ladies first. Anna, please. Anna Douglas, go ahead and looks like you raised your hand.
Raise my hand.
Got it. Looks like that. Was that like an applause thing? Got it.
I think so, yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna interrupt you first. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm gonna share the poll. It's 3 questions, but it would be great if everybody can fill it out. This is gonna help us improve and know how well we're doing, and make sure that we deliver topics that you guys are interested in. So it's gonna take like 3 seconds.
Awesome. Thanks, Kat. So while you're answering that, I was thinking when you did this last part, you made it both a huge problem, like when you talked about Modly Studios, the way the storytelling part, I really saw you meeting your friends all around the world, and I really saw the issue, and it got a lot bigger than just one trying to fit coffee table in the living room. You brought it up to a fantastic level. Really valuable to see that perspective.
Yeah, thank you. No, I think that's the exciting part about storytelling. I mean, you know, often you will find yourself getting more excited about your startup because there is more to the startup than you initially realized. You know, at Instabridge, we made this app that gave you free Wi-Fi wherever you go. And, you know, it started as a fun project, but then we realized that, you know, having people access to internet, that's a huge issue. Like it's something, you know, that touches on things like gender equality. I mean, there's like, you know, there's people that are poor that can't afford mobile data, and now you know, Wi-Fi is their way to connect to the internet and so on. So I think, you know, our pitch became like internet for everyone. We want everyone to have access to cheap and fast internet access. So I think that's an interesting part of storytelling, and like one of the things I tried to mention there in the beginning, that it can actually help you not just pitch better, but I think you actually become a better company, like because you realize how big this can actually be.
Nice. Anna, now
Yeah.
that looks like a
Now I
question.
raise my hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had two questions. One is, I am obviously one of those rare right brain people, or right brain dominated. I usually am stuck in the big picture and a very creative space. And I struggle more with fitting myself into the square left brain world, where there is this focus on the EBIT, or the less of the story, more of the detail. Any tips basically on that? Some of my colleagues in my startup are here, and I think luckily I'm in a team with we are cognitively diverse, but there's two dreamers on this call. And the second question, now I've forgotten it. No, it was about the purpose of a business. I noticed that you've talked about the amount of money that you raised, but you haven't said that your purpose was to make billions. And it's also been a discussion about the purpose of entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship, where we actually, you're focusing on this purpose-driven innovation or purpose-driven startup rather than money-driven. Any comment on that?
I think on the first part, I mean, congratulations on being right brain. I mean, I think that's fantastic. I mean, again, like, you know, most people are left brain, so I really hope that you know, your co-founders see you as a resource in that team. But then again, you know, like, just as it's important for the left brain people to get like somebody like you in the team, I mean, like, you need to make sure then that you have people that can take your dreams and help you, like, you know, pair that up. And I think, you know, if you do that, it's going to be great. And sorry, I'm not sure I understood what was the second part of the question with purpose driven.
Yeah, I'll simplify it. Basically, a lot of people are saying that they want to start a unicorn, or, you know, a major earning potential. I am more focused on a zebra. So we've come to an agreement on a zebracorn, somewhere in the middle. But I think what you're talking about in your pitch advice is much more focusing on purpose and, you know, keeping it simple and not overselling the kind of growth potential, but much more about focusing on the need and the purpose driven. Just interested in this apparent discrepancy, I think.
Yeah. Okay, and now I understand the question.
Where does purpose come in?
Yes. No, but I think the funny thing is, like, you know, the way to start a unicorn, to start a company, is to not focus on doing a unicorn. I mean, it is about, you know, doing something that's great. And I think a lot of startups, I mean, you can decide yourself, like, over the course of your startup, like, what is your ambition level, like, how high do you want to go? I mean, this you know, this company modeled that the furniture. I mean, I could say, you know, as I was doing this pitch, I mean, you could increase the scope massively. You know, you could say, okay, now we're the IKEA for custom furniture, but you know what? Like, we're not going to stop at furniture. We're going to sell art. We're going to sell posters. You know, we're going to help you decorate your house. Like, we're going to do everything to create your unique space. So, I think the way to approach that is just start at something that's exciting. I mean, something that's a problem that you really want to solve. And then I think it's up to you, you know, how much do you want this to grow? I'm kind of struggling with this myself. I mean, I work for private equity right now. And this is not the kind of company, you know, where we want 100x it, you know, 100 times the revenue. I mean, that's not the risk profile in private equity. So then, you know, then it's about, like, finding that, like, balance, like, what's exciting enough, you know, what's the purpose? And I think I just noticed here, the more I talk about the purpose and, you know, how we're turning music dreamers into music makers, and, you know, we're helping the world get more happier because there's better music in the world, the more our revenues grow. So there is something there is something there. I mean, I think you know, focus on the exciting, you know, make sure that you're solving an important problem, and then you can just decide what your ambition level is.
I think I agree with you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome, good question. We still have a couple of more minutes. Annika, go ahead.
Hi, Niklas.
Hey.
Hey, how are you? Great.
Great.
Yeah, I have one question, which is partly because I often, when I pitch live, I do the storytelling, not perhaps as much as you have shown, but to a large extent. My problem comes more when you're supposed to send in pitch decks, because they're often people are requiring or asking for so much information that, and it should be on like 9.5 pages, and you hardly get the cover page and the last page in. So where's your thoughts there? You know, airy and a teaser, or sort of packed and you know, getting everything across?
Yeah. No, I mean, my pitch decks, you know, when I pitch something, let's see if I can go back here and find the slide. But I mean, this is what my pitch decks looks like. And you know, and now we're talking about, you know, raising you know, paying money from Nordea, right? Debt financing and like real capital, not just venture capital. But this is what my slides look like. Like, it's very, you know, a couple of bullet points, text, and you know, and then we end up sending over Excel spreadsheets with like KPIs and data. But I really start here. Like, if I'm sending them something over that's about to get them excited and I explain you what to do, you know, this is what that looks like. And I think what sometimes happens, like what I've seen, and definitely saw that when we raise money here, and I definitely seen that in Instabridge too, is that, you know, when people aren't excited, like when they're not sure, you know, they haven't decided if they want to do a deal or not, you know, a lot of investors love to waste your time and just asking for like, oh, can we get this data, can we look at that? But then I think sometimes it's about like taking a step back and make sure, like, are you actually excited about this? Like, is this something that they're gonna invest in? Because I think, you know, if that's what they're asking for, if they're looking for hordes of data, you know, do they really want this, or are they trying to find a reason to say no? I think is what I would say. But I mean, this is like a real actual pitch deck that I would use. I mean, even here.
Thanks.
Great question, Annika. On that topic, like, is there something that you're very cautious about sending to investors in terms of information?
Generally, no. I think there's very little, like, I mean, unless you have something that's truly a secret sauce in your company, you know, like you have a patent pending or something like that. I mean, I tend to be very open and very transparent about it. I think the people find things out. People know people that work at your company, or, you know, they're public sources of information. Like, most information tend to leak anyway. I prefer to just be upfront about things.
Makes sense. Do you have different decks for presenting versus to send to them? Because this the decks or the presentation part of it doesn't include a lot of information, right?
No,
Do you have separate versions?
Right. No, I think that's a strength. I try to include this as you know, keep the story tight. I mean, usually like a typical pitch deck. I mean, the pitch deck that we did here at Recent Studios, I mean, like the pitch was like maybe 15 slides, and then there was maybe 20 or 30 appendix slides that you know, I didn't show if somebody didn't ask for them. But I mean, I think, you know, when you send this pitch decks over, like part of the way they're going to get used. I mean, I've done a lot of this like technique when I sell to partners. I mean, we've done a couple of partnerships here at Recent Studios. I mean, we're just about to announce a partnership with In Music. I mean, they're the biggest provider of MIDI controllers and keyboards. Like, you know, they own Akai and a bunch of those. And you know, when you send over the pitch deck to them, they are gonna, the person you talk to, like they will need to pitch this internally. So I mean, if you give them like a very tight deck with 10 slides that are very easy to present, you know that they're gonna do a good job of presenting you internally. So I think it should be very late in the process where you get to that point where you start sending over Excel spreadsheets and KPIs and so on. I mean, then my sense is that the deal should almost already be done, and they're almost doing their due diligence and not making sure that you're making stuff up or that there's anything that you've hidden from them.
Makes sense. Peder, go ahead.
Yes, today when you give us your pitch here, you're talking very fast. You're talking very like ta 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 ta. Is it some rhetoric thought behind it? Because when I talk, I would like more to use pauses and be like that. But maybe there are some thoughts about being that tang 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 tang.
No, that's probably just because I've had too much coffee. But I think
that's a good answer.
Yeah, no, I think you're doing it right. I think I do talk a little bit too fast, actually. I think that's probably something I can improve. It's probably a combination of being a bit nervous and drinking too much coffee than anything else.
Okay, maybe it could be some good sometimes to push on. Also, it sounds that you really want to tell something. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that's good.
Awesome, thanks, Peter. Annika, you had another question.
No, I just wanted actually to weigh in. I had a pitch which we won, but afterwards it was like,
congrats.
I got such a questions. It was like, did they even understand a word I was saying? And there, I think we had a very limited time. I spoke quite fast with the teleprompter, and which is my secret sauce. And this was Central Europeans. So it's important to remember who are you pitching for, because a lot of, I mean, we speak very good English here in the Nordics. If you come from France or Spain, or Belgium, that may not be the case. So adapt to your audience. If you talk to Americans or Brits, speak very fast. And then you can have the Obama, which is made for cutting when you talk, so the news organizations can cut in between. Thanks.
Yes.
Good points, Annika. Thanks for sharing. We have 5 more minutes. Anyone else have some questions for Niklas on how to win the attention of the investors and win term sheets?
I have a question about gender. I was about to use the word in myself. I use words like feel. I use what are considered more emotion words when I communicate. It's my style. I also am a native English speaker, so I tend to speak really fast. But that communication style and mirroring to your investors, who tend not to look, sadly, like me often, how much do you think you have to sort of mirror your investor style versus how much do you think it's part of the role of pushing the investor community, maybe in using, I would say, more gendered language or things that aren't maybe standard in a boardroom?
No, I mean, I don't think that's just like, any special language. I mean, fundraising as a woman, I don't want to speak to that. I mean, there could be things in the the gendered and, you know, talking to old angry men. That's hard for me to say, but no, but what I've discovered, you know, like, you know, when we did this, you know, here at Region Studio, I think that's a good example, because you know, at Verdane, I mean, this is Sweden's second, or sorry, the Nordics' second biggest private equity fund, and it's quite serious to run a private equity fund. I mean, it's lots of board meetings and it's a lot of formalia and so on. But you know, when I started doing my pitch decks like this, and I started showing them to, you know, Verdane's investors and so on. I mean, you know, these are, you know, oil funds and things like that from Norway. You know, I was afraid people would laugh at me, you know, like, because, you know, like a typical private equity, like if you've ever seen something that Goldman Sachs or like one of these big firms that produce, like, you know, there's like tiny, like there's you know, what's this, like font size 8 in everything they do, and it's like just full of text. And, you know, I came in with my slides, looked at this, but people loved it. You know, I think it was very refreshing for people to come in, and, you know, like nobody likes a slide that's just a wall of text. Like, you know, if you come into a board meeting and you put this, like, people feel smart, like it's fun, it's easy. Like I also tend to use a lot of humor. I joke a lot in the board meetings and when I present investors, and you know, and everyone, you know, everyone is the same. Everyone likes to laugh. You know, they come into a meeting, they think they're gonna see like a wall of text, and they see this, and, you know, somebody tells a good joke. I think that's a great way to raise money.
That's more fun.
Definitely emotional. Eivind, last question.
Yeah, thanks a lot. First of all, Niklas, thanks a lot for all the insight. I'm from the Plus team, so you helped me like my own company a little bit better. So thanks a million for that. Just one question on activating the right side brain of these investors. So one, I think we've done that a little bit at least, and people can relate to this data problem. Our problem then is that, or maybe opportunity, but want to get your insight on it, is that we very often go into this like workshop mode with the investors, where they come up with like 100 new ideas of where we should go, what we should take. Like, we're super early stage, right? So how do you deal with that? Like, how?
Yeah.
At least when we are sort of triggering that side of, or going to those discussions, we find it a bit hard to sort of steer it back into like our original idea, like without.
Yeah.
Great question. We have 1 minute, and if you guys need to leave before Niklas finishes answer, thank you so much for joining, and I'll be happy to connect anyone that needs to talk afterwards as well. Please, Niklas, go for it.
Yeah, okay, I'll take it 1 minute. No, I think I mean, here's my gut reaction to that. Like, I've been in that situation many times, and I almost have to send this, but like there was a blog post going around 1 or 2 years ago, like, the title was you know, never let your board members talk to each other without you in the room, or something like that. Because this happens a lot in board meetings too. You know, you talk, you know, you're talking about something, and then suddenly the board starts talking about all of the other stuff that you should be doing also. And I think what we kind of landed in, like, and it's very similar there, is that when that happens, I think people haven't really got on to the source material. Like, you know, you think that this is good because, like, you know, they're excited, talking about something else and other things you could do. And I think it's super important then, you know, to make sure that they actually are excited about what you're doing, you know, what you're doing right now, because those discussions, like, they can become detrimental. Like, you know, you want to have the discussion about, like, you know, in this Plus app, like, you know, how can you get all the data in? Like, you know, how can we get it out? Like, you know, what are your, why do you think that, you know, this channel is going to work? Like, what evidence? Like, that's where you want the discussion to be. And if the discussion goes off the rails a bit, I think sometimes it's an indication that, you know, they haven't really bought on to the core of the problem. I mean, it depends a bit, but, like, you know, I've noticed that in boardrooms, like, I'm trying to steer the discussion, like, we're trying to discussion about strategy X and why we're doing X, and people start talking about something else. Like, that's, even if it's exciting, sometimes it's not good. So I think it's your job to bring back the discussion and get them excited about what you're actually doing right now.
Makes perfect sense. Thanks so much. Thanks.
Awesome, Niklas. Great final question from Eivind. Thanks everyone for joining. As always, Kat, thanks for coordinating. And Niklas, happy belated birthday again, and really good to see you. Thanks so much for sharing your experience. I'll see everyone around.
Yeah, a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Super fun.
Thank you.
Thank you for good presentation. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Så skickar du mig en länk nu eller?
Ja, du får den över mail.
Ja, super. Syns vi snart då.
Ja, tja tja.